Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The former unified champion Anthony Joshua is on the brink of accepting a $15 million step aside to allow undisputed to happen between Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Uysk. Well, that's according to Gareth A Davies, who is reporting that in the Telegraph. And you can see here, this is from social media, and we'll get to the quite curious story because it doesn't really quote anyone. It's kind of like someone interviewed their keyboard. A lot's being said, but how much can be verified? And that is the issue. So this is from the Telegraph website. If you nip into the story and hit Control Print Screen, you can actually get to the story. Anthony Joshua to accept $15 million fee. And see, this is the thing. This headline, which may have been edited by a sub-editor or someone similar, is a little bit more definitive than the actual story proper. So we get to the actual text. Anthony Joshua is close to accepting a $15 million step-aside fee. So that is slightly different language to the headline. But what do you expect? The news media will jazz things up. That would pave the way for Oleksandr Usyk to fight Tyson Fury in an undisputed heavyweight title bout in the Middle East. Joshua had been due for a rematch with Usyk for his 3 world title belts, which he lost to the Ukrainian in London last year. But the former Olympic champion is now open to accepting a deal to step aside after a weekend of protracted talks among boxing's movers and shakers delivered hopes of a breakthrough. The Principality Stadium in Cardiff has also been reserved for Fury to fight on March 26. So, okay, we've got a number of sort of claims there, no quotes. It continues, despite the chaos, in inverted commas, and a mess by Fury's US promoter Bob Arum, nothing official has come from Joshua's management team, nor indeed has the Londoner announced his new training team after visits to several renowned American gyms, but his promoter Eddie Hearn last week suggested that boxing fans could expect the unexpected in the coming week as the situation is resolved for the spring. So that kind of leaves you, is he talking about the fight itself or the training situation? Slightly unclear. If Joshua accepts the financial step-aside deal rather than go ahead with his rematch, it would certainly be expected that the Londoner would face the Fury-Usyk winner. So where is the actual so-called quotes, facts, stuff that you can hang your hat on for the story? And I'm not saying that it's not true, or clearly Gareth A Davies has a source, but he didn't even quote a source, didn't even say a source has said. He just sort of has indicated there's some stuff going on. And a little bit sort of nefarious with some of the reporting there, because the quotes from Arum around it being chaos and a mess, that's from another story from an interview where Bob Arum was discussing that, you know, it's likely that Fury's going to either be fighting White next or someone else, and that Usyk and Joshua are probably fighting, but he said they're of some interest in a potential undisputed fight. There were some people in the Middle East trying to make that happen. And he said of that situation that it was chaos and a mess. So those quotes have been twisted a little here for the purpose of the story. But who is this Middle East interest that Arum was talking about? Is this Daniel Kinahan? Is it someone else? Someone who's just got a lot of money to throw around that is interested in getting a deal done? But this is suggesting that it's either going to happen or at least close to happening. But that doesn't mean that it is happening. And the fact that there is no one here with a quotable source, no one putting their hand up saying, yes, we're involved in this, or yes, we're talking about this, yes, we're looking at $15 million, I think we just have to kind of pump the brakes. But if there is really a push going for undisputed, well, that would be great to have that fight. It would be surprising to me, at least, if Joshua, after all the talk about the Warriors mentality and all these things and that he's focused on this rematch, it'd be somewhat surprising for him to then turn around and accept a step-aside fee. For a couple of reasons, because it would sort of destroy that narrative of the, I'm going to come back and become this champion, avenge this loss, Warriors mentality, you know, you get over the loss, get straight back in, all that sort of stuff. But also, doesn't Joshua want to be the one in the first undisputed fight in a generation? That's what his career has been building towards. This has been one of his stated goals for some considerable time, years, that he wants to be the guy that is undisputed, to try to separate himself from his generation. So if he was to take the money and step aside, I think that would sort of torpedo some of his narrative that he's been working about what he wants to do and why in his career, and it would be more about money than legacy. So some of these things you have to weigh up. And the fact £15 million, that's a lot of money, but Joshua does make more in some of his big fights, significantly more than that. So is this a case where, the other factor is as well, if he takes it, he's also saying he doesn't believe that he can beat Oleksandr Usyk right now. And that shouldn't be underestimated in terms of that sort of psychological sort of statement that taking the step aside would mean. Because if he, with the new training situation, the stuff that he says that he needs to do different to win, either by stopping him or winning 7 rounds or whatever, he's saying right now, if he takes a step aside, I can't beat this guy. I need more time. I need to get better. I don't have what it takes to beat this guy right now. So, the outcome may be, if he took a step aside, that he would face the winner of that fight. But at the end of the day, he would also be conceding he can't beat Usyk right now. And is it actually the smart business decision to take the step aside, or to try beat Usyk and get into that undisputed fight for yourself? I don't know, there's lots of pros and cons to weigh with all this sort of stuff. But for me, it wouldn't be a good statement in terms of his confidence and where he's at mentally right now in respect of an Usyk fight if he took a step aside. Financially, yeah, it's pretty good. And actually, there was some talk about a step aside some months ago, and Joshua said that came up, and he has to consider, the business side of the game, but he wanted to take the rematch with Usyk. That's where his focus lay. And he's been repeatedly saying that. So it would be somewhat surprising if he did step aside for all sorts of reasons. For Tyson Fury, that sort of side of the fence, he would be loving it, because I'm sure the WBC would acquiesce. And because of this whole sort of ongoing situation with Dillian Whyte, arbitration, Whyte trying to get more in a fight with Fury, there would be all sorts of loopholes and ways for the WBC to basically put that Whyte fight to the side and allow for undisputed to happen. Let's face it, I would rather see Tyson Fury in an undisputed fight than Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte. That's just big picture sort of, this is what we've been wanting to see for a generation. We've been dancing around the topic of undisputed for a few years now. We want to see that fight. Whyte will get his fight eventually, and I have seen some people say, well, maybe Whyte and Joshua would fight in the interim. But if Joshua was to take step aside, the deal surely would be that he would face the winner. But remembering, you're sort of putting your own sort of career and life to some extent in someone else's hands if you do that. There's no guarantee that, say, for example, if Tyson Fury fought Oleksandr Usyk and beat him, and then Tyson Fury declares himself the best of his generation and retires, then that sort of denies Joshua a piece of legacy that he could have had too. So there's all these ifs, buts, and maybes. And if I was him, I'd rather have my career firmly in my own hands rather than the beck and call of someone else. So there's all sorts of ruminations with this sort of situation. But going back to the story, it is somewhat curious that there is so little detail, that there's no sources. There's, it doesn't do the old Mike Coppinger sources are saying. It's just basically a series of statements. And how true they are, who knows? This is the thing. Not everything that Gareth A Davies does turns out and pans out. And the fact that the headline says he will accept, and then the story says is close to accepting, even in of itself, two different things. So I think we have to treat this with caution. But if Joshua takes the money and is going to get the step aside, not a good sign. But for Fury and for Usyk in the division more broadly, an undisputed fight, I'll take it. But it seems like there's all sorts of things happening in the shadows behind the scenes that we're not privy to. And some of this is starting to, the curtain's being pulled back just a little bit, but with very little detail. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.